Hello, my name is Cierra Bivins, and I'll be talking to you about how mental institutions have come a long way since the 19th and 20th century. Most of y'all expect to go to the doctor or hospital and get a precise diagnosis. However, this was not always possible in the early 19th and 20th century because many of the doctors came up with your diagnosis off of the top of their head or their beliefs about what you had. Many of these patients became guinea pigs for experimental treatments, and many of their diagnoses were incorrect. Thankfully, today we have correct medicine and treatments, a better diagnosing process, and more education for doctors. Many patients that were admitted to the mental hospitals were admitted for many different so-called illnesses. Many of the illnesses were depression, fright, anxiety, death of a cat, masturbation, childbirth, loss of money, and disappointed love. Masturbation was religiously viewed as though you had committed a certain sin in your life and you were being punished for it. Unfortunately, like I said, many of these illnesses were misdiagnosed, and therefore patients could not receive the proper treatment that they needed to be able to get well again. Doctors and nurses today have to go through many courses and have spent many years in school in trying to educate themselves on mental illnesses and how to treat them. However, in the 1900s, this was not possible because there was no schools to go to for doctors. Many of your doctors were either undereducated or uneducated. And most of the time the doctor came up with a diagnosis off of his stipulations. And these assumptions and stipulations controlled what kind of treatment that the patient received. Many of the doctors came up with numerous treatments and medicines to experiment with on many different illnesses to try to find a cure or, something that could stabilize the illness. Today, most patients receive correct medicine and treatment that are given by a doctor that has been educated, and these medicines and treatments have been researched by scientists that have researched the illness and been able to find a stabilizer or a cure for these illnesses. In the Victorian era, men controlled society, and men thought that they were smarter and that they could hold more information in their brains than women could. So therefore they thought that only women could get mental illnesses and not they couldn't. However, this was not always true because later on we did find out that men were able to get mental illnesses. Also, men thought that the job of a woman was to stay home in a house and take care of the house and the children that were there. If a woman tried to educate herself, she was probably put into a mental institute because she was thought to be insane. A woman could not have a job, could not go to school, and could not experience modern things like a man in the community was able to do. One of the numerous leading causes to mental illness they thought was the wandering womb. And the wandering womb is what doctors believed was the uterus was like a sponge that went around through the body of weak women and sucked all the intelligence that they had out of them. However, most of the time these women were subjected to outbursts, and this is what made them be labeled with the wandering womb. Many of the treatments for the wandering womb were bed rest, daily massage, no mental activities such as reading or writing, and solitary confinement. Many of these treatments made the women fall deeper into depression and into a deeper state of mental illness. Women in the Victorian era were also able to have more than one illness at one time. They were, most of the time, women had either the wandering womb or they were labeled with nymphomania. And nymphomania is if you were caught masturbating, if you were caught excessively flirting, if you bore a mentally handicapped child, or if you were raped or assaulted, you would be put into a mental institution for these things. Many of the treatments for nymphomania were bed rest and solitary confinement, straitjackets, bloodletting, leeches, those kind of things. However, most of the time, these women did not get out of mental institutions because nymphomania was always there. They were always, caught flirting or masturbating or some sort of thing like that. Back in 1864, there was an infirmary open for women, and many of these women were so-called dangerous. They were sent to a jail because there were no treatments for women. Many of the treatments back then were water, heat, insulin shock, convulsions, electronegativity, and most of all, lobotomy. these patients became worse in their illness, is what the doctors thought, because after so many treatments, many of these patients became even more, how do I say it? Probably they were more crazy than they were when they got there, because many of these treatments were harmful to their body. Thankfully, though, in today's time, we have scientists to research many of these treatments and medicines. We have doctors that are educated. We have mental institutions that can control and have one-on-one time with each patient and can work with each patient. And most of the time, mental institutions are outpatient outpatient stuff. Medicines and treatments today can also stabilize your illness, and they can also make your illness better, and you can lead a normal life. Thank you for your time.